What up, Vibers? It's your boy Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Today, we're diving deep into the art of connection with none other than Emmy Award-winning creator Topaz Adizes. I said it right.
Nice.
I've,
You
I-
did
I've been
good.
practicing it. Topaz is the mastermind behind the transformative series The and the author of 12 Questions for Love. And he's here to bring us some insights from over 1,200 real conversations around the globe. So get ready to unlock the secrets to deeper, more meaningful relationships and discover how just a few right questions can change your life. With that said, my friend, how are you? Welcome
Boom.
to the show.
Great intro. Thanks, man. Appreciate
Yeah,
it,
man.
Kai. I'm very happy to be here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really happy to have you here. As soon as I started to learn who you were, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good.
Why?
I'm glad.
What did you see that made you think it was gonna be good?
You know
Other
what?
than
It
a
was
strange
nothing.
name.
Oh,
Other than a weird
listen,
name.
you know how sometimes you could just feel somebody's vibe. You could just feel their energy. Like that's honestly all it was. And I've interviewed so many people, and sometimes you could just feel somebody's energy, and you're like, okay, this is going to be good. So I'm happy
Yeah.
that you're here, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
So
Thank
I
you very
want to
much.
start from the beginning
Yeah.
with you. So if you don't mind, so people get to know you a little bit, can you talk about your journey and how you started from studying philosophy at UC Berkeley and Oxford and how that turned into founding the Skin Deep? Can you start there?
Poof. Yeah. Well, that's like a 20-year gap, basically, because
Yeah.
right. So I started Skin Deep when I was 37, which is an experience design studio around human connection. But from graduating university to there was a long journey of finding what my passion was and what the value offering I could give. And I think I was, it was 99. I'm 47, so in 1999 I graduated, and I had I had the luxury to think about what I wanted to do. Why did I have the luxury? Because I didn't have college debt, student debt. My parents were healthy. I had a college degree, and I could always go back and work for my dad.
Mm.
And I was healthy, So I had no debt. My parents were healthy, and I could go work for my dad. And I just knew that I was super lucky. And I said, I'm not going to take this for granted.
Yeah.
And the question I asked myself was, how can I most contribute to my community? And I didn't know what the community was. I didn't know if it was the block, the world, the country, my city. I didn't a group. I just said, I'm going to find out how I can make the most of my time here and energy to contribute to my community. I'm going to go on that path. And I bought a one-way ticket to Australia, and I was reading books, and I was making money by working, like moving furniture and washing dishes and da-da-da-da-da. And that led me to Sweden because I had a friend who was living there, and I was working with him in a software incubator company in 2001, 2. And I was just went to India for the Helakumbh Mela. I had a camera. I was always carrying a camera with me when I went traveling and interviewing people. And I said, I'm really interested in filming people and talking to people. I really love talking to people.
It's a cool thing because you learn so much.
You learn so, but it's the camera was a door opener. It was a key. It enabled to justify, hey, can we have this conversation?
Right.
I'm here with a camera. I will just ask you. And, it was just a door opener, a key opener. And so that led to me really be interested in making films and exploring that. I never saw myself as an artist growing up, but then I said, I'd like to explore this. And then decided to move to New York just because New York was where humanity was. I thought there's, you could be anywhere. You'd meet fashion designers, people working in government or politics. You could work into the stock market. You could work into all kinds of things. Journalism.
New York has a little bit of everything.
Everything. It was just, it was in 2000, 2001. And I lived in Sweden at the time, and I just bought my ticket to move on October 6th. And I bought my ticket on September 10th. 2001.
Wow.
Yeah. And the next day, and I actually, the week before I was in New York, it was the end of August, I went to scout it out, and I was filming in Top of the World. I have footage from Top of the World from about like August 30th or something. And so I bought the ticket the next day that it happened, and I was wondering, okay, what am I going to do? Should I go and pursue this because I'm going, or what? And I had a lot of fear in me, and I did, and that led to pursuing filmmaking and making some films. And long story short, at some point, I just realized that the question I asked myself at that point was to make films that was kind of modern day meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You get popular culture into a room, they're watching something for 90 minutes. It's like meditation for mainstream culture because their breathing patterns consistent, they're focused, they're there. You're having a conversation with them through your film. That was interesting. Another question became for me, maybe I just want to inject ideas in the mainstream. And if I want to do that, then creating content for the internet and digital content is where that's at. Is, you can grow so much faster and create so much conversations immediately on the internet versus investing 5 years of putting a film and trying to get people to go to theaters to see it. Right. And so that led me to then say, okay, well, if I want to do that, what's the subject matter that's really interesting? And at that point, I have a brother who's 16 years younger than I. My name is Topaz. His name is Sapphire. Yes.
Those are some pretty cool names.
Yeah,
that's pretty fire.
My other brother's Onyx. So where my dad's not a hippie and he's not a jeweler, my grandmother's name is Diamond. So, and
that's pretty badass. That's pretty badass.
Dude, the best time. I remember when I just got to New York and I kind of was living off my name Topaz, and I was in a comedy club and on McDougal Street in the East Village, and the guy goes, "What's your name?" I'm like, "Topaz." He's like, "Topaz? What kind of name is Topaz?" I said, he's like, "You got a sister named Diamond?" I'm like, "That's actually my grandmother's name." "Diamond? What else you got?" I was like, Sapphire, Onyx. He's like, "Your family a bunch of strippers. You're all a bunch of strippers." And I thought like that was so funny. And I kind of just Topaz I love the name, but the point is I got to New York, I pursued filmmaking, and after a while I have a younger brother, Sapphire, and I saw how we were dating differently. He's 15, 16 years younger. And with the advent of technology and OkCupid and Tinder and just dating, messaging, and texting, I just thought, wow, we are engaging emotionally in our relationships so differently. And we're 16 years apart, and yet it's so drastically differently. And I thought, I really want to explore this. I want to explore. So then the question was, how's the emotional experience of being human changed in lieu of the technology that's coming our way? And so that's why I launched the Skin Deep. So that's how I got there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like the timing of all of this taking place, because I feel like the late 90s, early 2000s were this transition period when it comes to technology, right? And I always consider, like people my age and a little bit older. I'm 36. I'll be 37.
May 26, baby.
Yeah, May 26.
2 days ago.
Right.
2 days ago.
Right.
2 days ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because we're filming this ahead of time. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we got to watch this whole transition, because like I remember what life was like before we were on our cell phones every day. I remember what life was like before social media, and like it's all very clear to me. And now I see what it's like on the other end. So you obviously got to experience that too. So how much did your view, like I know you were watching your little brother, but just from a technology standpoint, how much was your view changing as the technology was changing?
So much. And I think even between our generation, I mean, we're 10 years apart in essence, and I still think there's a huge gap. And I'm not sure we could talk about and explore. I mean, I had one experience when I was 37, as I was about to start the Skin Deep. It was a few months before I started it. And I met this woman on OkCupid, this wonderful lady. We've been hanging out, dating for, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. And I remember I was in Idaho kind of working on a project. And so she was in Brooklyn and we were texting, and I said, love. Like, okay, love, take to you later, love. And she wrote back, she goes, Topaz, when you use the term love, are you really saying love like you love, or using love kind of like the English use love, like, hey love, I said, whoa, okay, so I called her up, and we spent the next hour talking about our feelings and our relationship and kind of where we were 6 weeks in. And I remember at the end of the call, she said, thank you so much, because all my other relationships that I've been in this dating circuit, all the real intimate conversations, the stuff about our relationships where we're at, like we just had now, have all been done over text. And thanks for calling. And what shocked me from that was the fact that I was 37 and she was 32. We were only 5 years apart.
Yeah.
And yet the way she was experiencing the dating world and communicating was profoundly different than mine, because for me, it was, I have to call. And I remember my friend and I were both single. Now we're both married and have kids. But I remember when it first came out, where it's like, why, when I call you to have a date, it's actually aggressive and you'd prefer me to text you? It feels awkward for me to not talk to you. But I had to get over that, right? Because for me, there was like that gap where some people were like, why are you calling me? Like, that's very aggressive. Just send me a text and then we can chat over text. And for me, it was, we're not really talking for texting. but for the younger generation, they were talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just understanding the code switching. Oh, okay, that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I realized, wow. And I remember sometimes my younger brother, I was in dating and you might, Cupid messaging and, you're doing the little dance of seduction or flirtation on text.
Yeah.
And I remember him reading, he's like, ooh, what did he say? He said, like, he didn't say aggressive. He said, ooh, like that's a bit, what's that about? Like, he's like, you're not code switching.
It's open to interpretation. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the other person is how they're saying it.
Totally. And my brother, so he was code switching. He was reading the text. He understood emojis on a different level, what to use. He could code switch in text so fast, and I couldn't. I can code switch. Code switch means adjusting to the person you're with. I could do that if I see them.
Right.
But on text, you can't, and you can't get the tone. And yet, his ability to code switch was native to him, and it wasn't to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, wow, we are shifting. And we humans are so good at adapting to change. Like, I don't know if you remember when bottled water came out. Do you remember when bottled water came out?
I don't think I do.
Okay. I remember there was always Pellegrino and, like, high class, with gas in it. But when bottled water came out, it was in like the early 80s. And I remember being in the store. I was 6, 7 and thought this is just ridiculous. This is so stupid. Why is there bottled water? I can drink from the tap.
Right.
But now we take bottled water as though it's always been bottled.
That's true.
And we have become accustomed to it. We humans are so good at adapting to change that we assume it's always been like this. I mean, I'm 47. I remember when I first started emailing in 98, 99. I can't imagine working without email now.
I can't imagine. I don't know how I did it. I carry my phone. Everything's on my phone. My calendar, text, calls, everything is on my phone. I don't know how the hell I survived without it. Because you remember back in the day, we had AOL. You could not use your house phone and be on the internet at the same time. With the little yellow guy going across the screen.
Totally, you're waiting there, and what we take for granted is how quick things change, and then we assume it's always been that way. And how that pertains to this conversation is the emotion of love, and also the practice of love. Because there's the feeling of love, but there's also the practice of love, the act of it. And both have shifted, and yet we use the same term. When grandma used to bleed the ink off of her pen, of her heart, onto the paper, and fold the paper, and put it into an envelope, and lick the envelope, and walk to the corner, and put it in the post box, and wait for a response 2, 3, 4 weeks or months later to get a response from her, whoever it was far away, if it was at war or whatnot, or long distance, that's a different experience than when we're saying a DM right now or a voice note. It's a different thing, and yet we call it love. The emotional experience is shifting. And so the impetus of the Skin Deep, our project, this Experience Design Studio, was let's just bring more conscientiousness to the relationships in our lives, to how we're being, because things are shifting. Things are changing.
Right.
And and asking the question, is it good or bad? That's okay, you can ask that question. But it's just, if you're in a flood, and your house is flooded and there's water everywhere, you can ask if it's good or bad. But what's a more constructive question is, how do we get out of here? How do we surf this? How do we make the most of this? Right. So how are we utilizing these tools around us to create relationships that are beneficial for us, that give us more sense of empowerment, deepening our sense of being alive? That's kind of been the work I've been in for the last 11 years, my team and I.
Yeah, and it's been great because as I mentioned in the intro, the wonderful intro, I got to build you up, my friend. I got to build you up.
I love it. I love
Emmy Award winner over here. But with that said, so you went on to create the And, right? And that pretty much evolved into 12 questions for love. Do you feel as though there is a common thread that impacts the quality of conversations that people are having, based on the experiences that you have, the people that you talk to, the book 12 Questions of Love? Do you feel like there's a common thread that you found that impacts relationships and communication the most?
That's a great question, but I want to know what you mean by thread. So
do you feel
what would be define thread, or give me an example? What do you think a thread is?
Do you feel that there is a common, I don't want to say mistake, But do you
Uh-huh.
feel as though there's a common ideology or approach that often can determine the quality of a relationship and the communication that comes with it?
I love it. The reason I love it is like, okay, how am I gonna not go off for 10 minutes right now? And
Listen,
just
hop off. Let them cook.
No,
Let them
let him
cook.
cook. Look, I've been wow, yeah. Okay. One, I think we all have a profound desire to be seen.
Yes.
I think that's a profound desire to be seen. And part of being seen is to be heard. You know, if you're heard, it's a step closer to being seen. And yet there's a great deal of fear in being seen because arguably it's vulnerable. You know, when you're fully seen, you're fully vulnerable. And where are we taught the journey or the skills in order to be seen or to be heard or to see? Where are we taught that? Where we taught? Okay, what is this guy talking about? If you're listening, what is this guy talking? Well, where are we taught, for instance, to have conversations? Where are we taught to ask good quality questions? Where are we taught to listen? How to listen? We don't get taught that. We model it. We model it through our families and maybe through your friend groups. So if you happen to be born in a family that really listens to each other and really has great conversations and holds a space for that, you're very, very lucky. I wasn't. And I don't think many of us were. And then we're in a society that gives us content is a lot of people talking.
Yes.
Not listening. If you think about all the content you watch on films, on TikTok, on everything you watch, you're always seeing the person talking. When do you see the person listening?
Right.
At the same time, and that's what the and is, right? The and is about the space between, because relationship is you and I, us and them. It's the and that connects us. So that's the impetus for the and is. And we always show both faces at the same time, whether it's a bipanel triptych. You always see both. And what we're saying there is both are equally important because what's important is not the individual, but the connection and the relationship. And then what can we learn from that? And so I think there's, you know, and the 12 questions for love is a distillation of, hey, what have my team and I learned about holding the space for these cathartic, incredible conversations over the last 10 years, over 1,200 of them, all kinds, brothers and sisters, grandparents, grandchildren, lovers, exes, people dating. What have we learned? We've learned two things. One is you got to create the space. We can talk about that. And two is you have well-constructed questions. We can talk about that. But if you create the space and you have well-constructed questions, you can deepen your connection. And then ultimately, okay, Topaz, great. Okay, we're talking about cathartic. What's the payoff?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't like having these. There's people in my own family who don't like having what I consider deep conversations. They don't. That's probably why I'm on this journey of exploring intimacy is because I necessarily did not get that modeled in my home. And I was yearning for it. Right?
Right.
And so for the people who don't want to have it, I get it. But the question is why? Why should I do that? Why should I step into discomfort? And my answer to that is because there's a great payoff. And what's the payoff? It's in being seen.
Yeah.
It's in, and why do we get seen? Because when I get seen, my sense of what it means to be alive, what it means to be human is amplified. It's deeper. It's bigger. I feel more fulfilled. If you want a more tactical answer, do you want a resilient relationship? Do you want a fulfilling relationship? You got to practice the art of conversation.
Yes.
Practice the art of love. Now, it doesn't, when I say conversation, it doesn't mean you have to talk all the time. What it means is that you have to sit in the space and ask quality questions.
Right. And I'm glad you said, there's a couple things there that I want to pick into there because number one, I work in marketing, right? And one of the things I tell my team all the time is, as they're building the strategies, is people don't buy the products; they buy the results of the product, right? And so that kind of reminds me of what you were talking about. Like, what's the end game here? Like, what do you get out of this? That is what people should ultimately be thinking about. Also, one of the reasons why I kind of phrased that question first was to identify the pain points that people may have, and then go into how 12 questions of love can address those things. So we're establishing the issue, we established the pain points. 12 questions of love addresses a lot of what people of what we're talking about here in the pain points and what people are going through. Why do you feel people are so uncomfortable conversation, just basic asking questions, getting information, processing that? You would think it would go without saying, but some people just find that so uncomfortable. Why do you think that is?
Because once you practice it, you get good.
Mm.
And it's technology creating spaces for conversation or monologues.
Mm.
I mean, you send a voice note to your friend on WhatsApp. They send a voice note back. You're not having a dialogue. You have a monologue, right? You're not in. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying let's acknowledge what it is, and it's a different thing. I remember when my grandfather, I'm at home, I'm in his house talking on the phone, and he flicks me on the back of the ear and says, no. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm talking to my friend. He's like, no. You don't talk to your friend on the phone. You talk to your friend to arrange a time on the phone to meet in the park. And that's where you talk to your friend. You don't talk to your friend. So we've been shifting, right? To me, talking on the phone was sufficient. I was emotionally fulfilled by a conversation on the phone. Now we're being emotionally fulfilled from a voice note or from a text, which is fine. It's not judgment. It's just saying, let's be aware that it's shifting. And therefore, what we're getting emotionally is shifting or not. And let's not forget what is possible, which is the investment of stepping into a space of inquiry, deeper inquiry. And that's what the tools I'm trying to give people in 12 Questions for Love.
Right.
And why? And I think why is that? Is because we're living in a different world of technology. I mean, it's not bad or good. It's just, man, you're in Philly. I'm in Uruguay right now. We're having this epic conversation. It's wonderful. God knows where all the people who are listening to us. This is great.
Yeah.
Right. In the past, you'd find your partner through physical proximity at church, at work, on the bus, at a friend's party. You literally had to run into them.
Quite literally sometimes.
Quite literally. You had physically, that's where, or even your own identity was based on physical proximity. Who around me is like me? I'll give it a name. Now, you can find people like you who do not live within 100 miles of you. You go into the internet, you can identify yourself with communities that are not physically. That's an amazing superpower. Right? But it creates a different sense of emotional connection. And it's not good or bad, but we should need to be conscientious about it. So coming back to asking questions, and why are people finding it more difficult? Because we don't practice it. And we don't have the tool guide. That's why I distilled it down the book, and that's the offering. Is here's a very simple way. Like, let's create the space. What does this guy mean? Just create the space. We can talk about that.
That's the thing I wanted to ask next, was the space. Like the I guess one word for it is a safe space for people to explore those feelings, to explore those questions. If people are struggling with this and they're listening right now, they're like, hey man, that sounds great, but like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I can do that. What would you, if they don't feel like they can,
Let's just stop right there.
Yeah.
You said, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. That's the first thing we got to make distinction about. Number one, you can be safe and not feel comfortable. And that's a great place to be.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So that's a great place to be. Let's not confound discomfort with safety, like being unsafe.
That's a very good point.
Are you right? So you want to be safe. Absolutely. And I'm not a therapist, like you're not a therapist. I can't give you exactly what the criteria for safety is. I just break it down to, do you believe that this person you're in a conversation with, you have a mutual trust and respect? That you're both going to the same place, that you both respect each other's differences and your perspectives, and you acknowledge each other's spaces. Do you feel safe in that? Okay.
And how do people approach that? Like, how do people get themselves to a point that
But just the flip, then the flip is then if you feel safe, then now let's ask each other uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
Because we're safe to explore discomfort. And why are we in discomfort? Because the path to growth is lived by your fears and discomfort. So pursue them wherever they appear.
How does one know that they're safe? Is there a feeling?
I cannot.
They just kind of know.
I feel like I'm not. I don't feel like I'm qualified to tell you what is safe or not, because I have not been in. I just haven't had that much. I mean, I've had obviously toxic experience, but not enough to tell you this is the criteria. I think that would be. I wonder that too. How do you say? I don't know, but like, do you feel safe? Is it safe? And then being uncomfortable is another thing. So I feel very safe with my wife, and we have very uncomfortable conversations.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Same thing with my dad. I have really hard conversations with my dad. I feel super safe with my mom, but I have really hard. Now, maybe my mom doesn't feel safe with me because I like to have these intense conversations, and she doesn't. So maybe for her, she doesn't feel safe.
Right.
I don't know how to decide what is safe or not, but I think we need to separate safety and comfort.
Right. How much does compromise come into play here, right? So like if you know, like let's just say you're talking to your partner and you feel a certain way, they feel a certain way. How much does compromise come into play when we're trying to create those spaces for each other?
All right, check this out. So look, when you say compromise,
Yeah.
why are we compromising? About what? And when you say compromise, what comes up for me is if I ask you, what is our biggest challenge in our relationship right now? So I'm asking you, what is our biggest challenge in our relationship? And you say this and that. Then I go, no. Because the question, by the way, is shaping you to be the arbiter of objective truth. Because you're saying, what is? So you're saying, well, what is the biggest challenge in our relationship right now is this. And I go, wait. No, I think it's this. So then it puts in a position that what we're arguing about what, and therefore we might have to compromise to find the answer. If instead I said, what do you feel? Or what do you think? Or what in your opinion is the biggest challenge? That's
Right.
your opinion. And then it's my opinion. And then we don't necessarily have to compromise in terms of finding the objective truth. So it's not like you have to compromise if you're talking about like life. What are we going to do with our lives here or there, or go work here? Or, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what I wanted to point out there was that the question shapes the answer. And if you're asking questions that give someone the arbiter of power and truth, because you're saying what is or why is this, instead of adding the words do you think or do you feel or in your opinion, then by doing that, they become the subjective truth, and there's less of a need for compromise because that's your experience. My experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You've been promoting 12 questions of love for a while, and I'm curious, do you ever receive pushback? Is there ever a time that people are like, bro, no, come on, dude? Do you ever is that something that comes across your desk every now and then?
Not in the world of the podcast because the people are being kind. But if you got pushback, let's explore it, man. Let's do it.
Like me personally?
Yeah.
No. I don't. No. Like I'm just curious because like I love asking that question to people that I'm interviewing because like to your point, when people are interviewing, it's like okay, like especially like one of my biggest pet peeves is like when you watch like a talk show, you watch like Jimmy Fallon or something like that, and he's just kind of bullshitting, talking to the guys like oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And it's like it seems like really inauthentic sometimes, right? And I'm very curious like if anybody ever. Like I don't personally have any challenges because I like what you have written. Like I agree with, and I totally see that standpoint. I'm curious if there's ever been a time, whether it's on a podcast, social media, in real life communication, whatever it may be, that somebody is like, "Dude, bro, no, this is bullshit."
I'll tell you the forms of podcast pushback we get. One form of pushback we get is these questions are horrible because we sell 12 different editions, versions. Family, friends, coworkers. Couples, long-term, all these different editions. And we get, these questions are horrible. They're just leading to conflict. And so I should have first apologize for the tone that I'm kind of, that wasn't very nice of me. What I'll say is like, they come out and say, these questions are not really, these questions lead to conflict. I don't know why you play this game, lead to conflict.
Interesting.
And I think that's a valid point. I think there's a lot of constructive energy in conflict. And let's be honest, if we're avoiding having the real conversations, there's a lot of other things, in my opinion, the pair are avoiding. Right?
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, I feel like it's like stretching. I mean, like, what I've seen in my life is that when you avoid something, you have to have that conversation and you just avoid it because it's going to be too painful. What is going to happen is that life is going to get you to the point where you have to have that conversation. But because you haven't had it for 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, 3 months, it's going to make that conversation that much more difficult because it requires that much more energy to force you to have it. Does that make sense? It's almost like, it's like your tendons in your body and your when you're stretching. If you don't stretch for weeks, months, and then you go for a sprint, you're going to pull a muscle.
Yes.
You're just not stretching. So what are we stretching our relationship? And why are we stretching in our relationship? So it makes it more resilient. Why do you stretch your muscle? So that your muscle is more resilient and you're capable of doing more things.
Right.
Why aren't we doing that in our relationships? And by avoiding
I have to do that now because I'm old and I play basketball. Man, I have to stretch every piece of my body.
But that's the same thing for when you first meet someone. and you're dating and everything's great and you're having sex 3, 4, 5 times a day, a week, and then you get to a year, 2 years, then you have kids and you're wondering, wait, what's going on? It's like we get older. Our bodies get older. It requires a certain kind of maintenance. Our relationship grows and develops and requires a certain kind of maintenance. Why aren't we granting our relationship a practice, acknowledgement of, training, performance, recovery, like we do in exercise, for instance?
Right.
Why do we take? That's one other form of pushback I get, which is, no, I know everything about my partner. Why would I have to ask them these questions? I know everything. I've been with them for 15 years. Well, my response to that is, what, you haven't changed in 15 years? Your relationship hasn't shifted? Don't you want to explore it? Is that your answer of way of avoiding uncomfortable conversation? Yeah. And it goes to, why do I want to have an uncomfortable conversation? Because that's a way of exploring the relationship with the people that are most intimate with you. It's a reflection back of your experience of being alive, in my opinion. So what's another form of pushback I get? I mean, the one about the questions leading to conflict, I think, is a fair criticism, but I think that's just exercise. It's like saying we got to exercise, we got to stretch here.
Yeah. Is there a wrong way to use these questions? So there's 12 questions, and I'm actually curious why 12 and not 13 or 11.
Oh, sure.
Like, I'm just out of curiosity. Before I get to that, are there, let's just say somebody gets this, they read through it, they're like, okay, bet. Is there a wrong way to that you've seen people utilize this, or maybe even in a manipulative way to potentially even control their partner? Have you ever seen that or experienced that?
Well, the questions are designed in a way that makes it difficult to control another person, but obviously that's totally possible, and that speaks about the relationship that one is in. What I can say is that, so it's in the book, is that what's imperative here is that you create the space for humans to be humans.
Yeah.
And that means you come to this without an agenda. A part of creating a space is coming to it with an intention. Intention is where you begin, and agenda is where you plan to end. So say you and your partner, you want to have this conversation. So you can bring an intention, say, hey, I want to have a conversation. I'd love to play this game with you. I'd love to do the 12 questions in this book. I'd love to, let's ask each other let's ask each other random questions. Okay, let's play the game. Just create the intention of creating the space, which is, I want to have a conversation, exploratory conversation with you. I want to talk about our relationship. I want to explore. Okay, but don't have an agenda, because your partner feels the agenda. And then what happens is that they're engaging with you not with their heart, which is what connects, but the mind, which is built to protect. So they're engaging with you with the mind because they feel the agenda. We're playing tactical chess here.
Right.
There's, how often, sometimes your partner or your family member or whoever it is comes to you and they're asking a question that they already know the answer to. They're setting you up for some kind of response, and then they have the follow-up question and you can feel it. And you're not responding with the heart. Right. You're responding with the brain, which is, okay, wait, how do we create the space so that it tells the mind, relax, you are now in service of the heart? How do we train our mind to be the altars upon which our heart sits? That's a great line that my friend Samantha and Austin told me like 3 weeks ago. I was like, that's great. How do we train our mind to be the altar upon which our mind sits? What serves what? So how do you create the space for that? Now, people might say, well, Topaz, this guy's crazy, man. I'm pissed off at my boyfriend because he did this, and I want to have a conversation about it, and I'm going to go ask him why he did it. Fair enough. Totally valid. How do you create the space with that energy that you have, that disappointment you have? Okay, stop and go to your curiosity. I'm in a relationship with this person. I'm going to ask them this question. Before I ask them that question, stop. What am I really curious about? Because when you're curious, you're setting the intention. I really want to know this. I don't know where it gets to. Versus, I want to ask this question because I want them to apologize and I want them never to do it again. And that's an agenda. That's where you want to get to. And that is not an invitation for someone to step into a space.
Right.
So by curiosity, you're going into your intention. What do I want to know? Where, I feel, why do you think I'm experiencing this sense of jealousy? Or why do you feel I'm interested to know what you're opinion, because I'm experiencing this. Why do you think I'm experiencing that when you did that? And asking, and really come from a place of curiosity, which means you don't have the end point you expected to get to, but you know the starting point.
Right. Why 12? Why 12 questions?
Because what I'm talking about all comes from basically holding the space and witnessing the space of these cathartic, vulnerable conversations that people have had 10 years, 1,200, over 1,200 of them. And what we do is we bring two people in a room, sit in two chairs, they face each other. They filled out a questionnaire. So my team and I have created custom-made questions for them. You sit down, and it's usually 12 per person. So they ask each other 24 questions total, but it's 12 per person. And so I felt 24 was too many in a book. Just I could distill it down to 12. And why 12? Because that's how we've seen that really works. And that's because there's an architecture to it, and there's a 5-act structure. There's the opening, which creates this trust and the space from the past, the present, what is unique about our love and synergy about our love and our connection, and that creates a space of trust. It reminds people of why they fell in love, why they came together. The book, by the way, is not just for romantic couples. It's for anyone you're intimate with. It works for anyone you're intimate with. That could be your best friend. It could be your brother, sister. It could be your dad, mom, grandparent, son. And so the first 3 are that. The second 3 are about exploring conflict between us, right? And it's all building up, right? And then question 7 and 8 are really the climax, if you will, really vulnerable conversations. So 7 is, what's the pain in me you wish you could heal, and why? 8, what's one experience you wish we never had, and why? Now, if we just ask that in the very beginning, you get an answer. But if you ask that 7, 8, and you've built the space, you've built the architecture of trust, and reminding people of what their relationship is built on, and this unique synergies that is created by virtue of their connection, to then exploring slowly but surely their conflicts, then you get there. You're deeper. And then 9 and 10 are starting to land the plane, where we're acknowledging what we're learning from each other. We're acknowledging why we're in each other's lives. And 11 and 12 are really about saying the things that ultimately, to me, are at the core of a relationship, which is, if this were to be our last conversation, what's something you never want me to forget? Because you never know when it's over. And we might as well say like the ultimate truth now. And the last one is, why do you love me? So it takes you on this journey. And, the impetus for this was the editor, who'd been a fan of the Skin Deep in the end for many years, said, Topaz, what have you learned? And can you distill it down to a book? What will be the 12 questions, or what will be the questions that really work, and why, that you've seen work?
Right. So what are people supposed to do after, right? So they go through this. Obviously, if I were to go through this with, say, my mom, right? God willing, I would still see my mom the next day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? So what are people supposed to do after the fact? What are they supposed to take from this so they could apply it to the rest of their life, perhaps? Or are they supposed to do it over and over again? Like, how should they approach this?
I say that, at the beginning I said, love is an emotion, and it's also a practice.
Yeah.
So practice it, maintain it, make it, respect the date night, or once a month, have a check-in with your mom, or, whatever it is, have these conversations often. And this book teaches you how to create your own questions, right? So you don't have to ask the same questions every time, which you can ask the same questions. The answer is going to be different. Right. But it teaches you how to ride the bike, how to create the space, how to ask the questions, how to deal with when it gets really bad and heated and you don't know the way out, right? So it's teaching you how to ride the bike so that you can have more of these conversations in your life. And I suggest make it a practice, a maintenance check. We do maintenance checks on our cars every 10,000 kilometers or 12,000 miles or whatever it is every year. Are we doing that in our relationships? We go to the doctor to check our health once in a while. Are we doing that in our relationships? Right? We go to the gym, or we do things, our spiritual practice, our writing practice, our exercise practice, whatever practice. Our work is a practice. You're going to work to earn money, right? You're doing that consistently. What are you consistently doing in your relationship?
Right.
Why? And that's kind of another pushback. It's like, why? If we're in love, we don't need to have questions given to us because we're in love. It's like, wait a second. Why is being in love mean that you already automatically have questions to ask? Since why? I can be deeply in love and have nothing to say because I know we're always in the same pattern. I love my dad tremendously, but sometimes I'm sitting there and him and I don't talk. Why? Because I'm in the headspace of, I know the pattern that we're always in. He knows the pattern. If I ask a question, so how do you break that? Create a new space and create new questions. Hey, Dad, what do you think is the hardest thing for me being your son? Hey, Mom, what's one thing I misunderstand about you and why do you think I do?
Right. What are like, so many people have experienced this ideology and this book and all of that. What is some of the feedback that you've gotten about like just how it's helped them and their relationships and their friendships and their family and coworkers, like, oh, what kind of feedback have you gotten from this?
Amazing feedback. And I say that because it's the thing. I mean, I have a 4-year-old son and a 15-month-old daughter, and I'm proud of them. It's not important if I'm proud of them for them, because they should be proud of themselves. But I would really love to be alive to see them become their own adult humans. But barring them, this project at the end is the proudest thing I'm proudest of. And that if I die tomorrow, I know I did my contribution, because of the responses I get, because of the fact that every time we do a production, people fly in across the country to do it, or across the globe.
Yeah.
And people tell me the stories of how the deck helped them or saved their life, or how someone says, Topaz, I saw Ben and Cedra when I was in college, senior year, 8 years ago. They told me about what kind of relationship is possible. I said, that's the kind of relationship I want to have. And now 7 years later, I'm on the end, and I'm talking to my husband that we're married 3 years, and it's shaped, and we play the and card games, and it's shaped by the videos we saw and by playing the card game on a regular basis. Like that's the level we're in now. You know, Laura and Brad, we filmed them in November of last year. We released them sometime January, February. It's the longest video we ever released on YouTube. It's 42 minutes or so. Married 22 years. We filmed them in November of 2023. December of 2022, their 18-year-old son, Brady, was in college, went into the shower, and they don't know why, but he died. Yeah. No drugs, no heart attack, nothing. He just freak thing. He died. So here they are 11 months later, on the and, sharing their story on the and, on YouTube and TikTok. I mean, that's an honor. That's an honor and a responsibility to hold the space for that. And they told me, they said, Topa, I said, why are you doing this? I said, because, well, first, a few months after, he was a Marine for 14 years, Brad was. And he said in the questionnaire, this is the scariest thing I'll ever do is have this conversation like on public, right? But why are they doing it? Because they came across the healing deck early on, and that created a space for them to have a conversation about their relationship in lieu of this huge tragedy that happened. And so then they came on because said, if we can have a conversation, if just a few pairs who are experiencing similar things can see our conversation, and that can give them a bit of hope or light or condolence or support, then we'll do it. And that's why they did it. And for me, that's what it's about. It's about that. It's about helping each other. It's about illuminating humanity.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I could tell by your reaction to that question, and I could see it in your eyes, how much this fills your cup, right? From a personal standpoint. When you wake up in the morning, is that what keeps you going? Like, obviously you have your kids, your family, obviously that's obviously really important, but this specifically right here, when you wake up in the morning and you think of this, how much of your cup is filled from that? Because you're clearly doing a lot of great work here, and you're helping so many people, and it's been going well for a while now, and I'm really curious, like, for you personally, this obviously has a strong effect on you as a human being, and I'm just curious, like, how much, when you wake up, how much of this is just like, fuck yeah, you know, how much of that fills your cup?
I mean, it doesn't fill my cup entirely, because I'm always trying to create new things, new products, new things.
Sure.
What I get, so I love it. I feel so lucky that I can earn a living to support my family while doing something that offers value to people that I love. Like, I'm so fortunate and so grateful. I get high off of people connecting and getting a sense of humanity. This doesn't mean that I like people. This doesn't mean that sometimes I'm not judgmental. In the ant space, when I'm in that zone, I'm not judgmental. But in my life, with my wife and my brother, and, like, you know, with people I meet, like, sometimes I'm Topaz, you're sometimes a prick, man. You gotta, just the voice in my head is judgmental. It's like, I gotta sort that out, right?
Yeah.
But humanity, people connecting, sense of humanity that makes us greater than humans, is humanity that I get high off of. And I remember hosting parties. My wife and I, we love hosting parties. In New York, when I lived there, even at the Bachelor, I hosted parties. Sometimes people thought I was like high on some drug, but I didn't drink or do anything. I just was high because people are having a great time and I'm connecting people. And that gives me a lot of energy and fuel, right? And so I kind of live for that. And I'm searching for that. The other things that fill my cup, obviously, are my children and finding moments to look at the sunset, to look at the stars, to look at the mountains. Like that also fills my cup. So I can't just do the work. I did that for a long time and I got depressed and the energy wasn't recycling. Like I was, and so it doesn't completely fill my cup, but I definitely yearn for it. And it's that carrot that I'm always chasing, those hits of human connection and value.
Yeah. Are there
Question.
two historical figures that you would love to sit down and have this conversation together?
wait, with me or with each other or what?
Or with each other that you would sit and watch have this conversation?
That's a great question. I've always been asked if you could sit down with 3 people, who would you sit down with? But I'm gonna integrate. That's a great question. Who would I love seeing the and with?
Yeah.
My mom and dad. I've done the and with my dad twice. It's on YouTube. Just because I felt, you gotta walk the walk, not just do the talk the talk. So I had to step into that space and share that publicly.
I really do appreciate the work that you've done here, because I feel as though my audience, they ask a lot of understandable questions about communication in general, relationships. And I always tell people, like you said earlier, like I'm not a mental health professional. I don't pretend to be one. I always joke. I always say I'm not a mental health professional. I don't play one on TV either, And so I love giving people resources. I love interviewing people like you. I love talking with people that are able to provide this resource that people can take home and apply to their real life, because it's hard. And I know you were mentioning earlier about the importance of, living in that uncomfortable space, asking uncomfortable questions, having the conversation, having that dialogue, listening to each other. And it is hard. It is really hard. I can say that from personal experience, I sometimes, and this is something I've gotten better at it. Thank you, therapy. But, I've gotten better at it. But it's hard for me to sometimes have those conversations, because I am afraid sometimes of what the other person's reaction is going to be. And because I'm diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, so I'm just in my head about everything anyway. So I'm sitting there being like, okay, if I ask this question that's written here in this book, or if they ask me, sometimes I'll say to myself, how would they want me to answer this question? Not necessarily how do I feel. How do I think that they think that I should answer that question? That's a struggle that I have. So, and I know I'm not the only person out there that has to deal with that. For people like me and those that are listening, what would you say to that?
That's a great question, man. Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to answer that. And it's something that I alluded to earlier in our call, in our interview, is that what's really important is not even to talk. It's not about the conversation in terms of articulating the answers. What's important and essential is to sit in the questions. So if you're there with your mom or whoever it is, and you ask the question, and by the way, the rule every time we do the and, if you buy the card games, if you play the book, if you're in the production, is that we have to read every question out loud, but you do not need to answer anything you don't want. You can pass on every question, because it's not necessarily about articulating the answers. It's about sitting with these questions. So you're there with your mom, for instance, and there's a question here, and you look at each other and you say, you're thinking about what you really would say. You're thinking what she would really say. You're thinking, what does she want me to say? You're thinking all these things. You're having a conversation already in your head. The relationship with your wife, with your mom, is already illuminated. You feel it. You both can say, pass, right? And you also ask, what should we do in the future? These conversations lay seeds, and the seeds will blossom at different times. And that's why we do the practice or maintenance, because every time you do that, you're not only laying seeds, but you're pouring water, and you're gardening, and you're putting some nutrients and some sunshine, and they will blossom at different times. The results of the conversations, you'll be thinking about something someone said, and Next time you engage with them, you can re-engage maybe differently because of the seed that was laid in the conversation. Now you see them 2 weeks later and you go, you know what? I'm going to say this differently. I'm going to be more conscious of our relationship because they illuminate something that I didn't realize about our connection. Right?
Yeah.
So what I would say is that you don't have to have the conversation. But what's really helpful is just to sit in the space of asking the questions.
Yeah. Which is scary. It's scary to think about sometimes. It's really scary, and it is uncomfortable. But as you said, that uncomfortable feeling, those uncomfortable conversations, those uncomfortable questions, not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to be in that space.
But let's go into that for a sec.
Yeah.
It's scary. And what I want anyone listening to this to take away is that the questions are far more important than the answers. And the questions shape the answers. Just like a race is shaped by the course it's run on, the answer is shaped by the question. And there are differences between, there's not good or wrong questions, but there are better questions. There are stronger questions. There are well-constructed questions. If you ask the question, why do we fight so much? Why am I so scared? Why do they dump me? Why do they reject me? Your mind is a servant to whatever question. It's a dog that will chase any stick you throw.
Right.
When you ask those questions, they're throwing the stick into a muddy spot. It's like, why do they reject me? Oh, because this. Why do we fight so much? Because this. Your mind is a servant. It's the dog chasing the stick. You're asking yourself questions that are giving you answers that are not necessarily empowering. If you ask yourself instead, what can I learn from the ending of this relationship that will make me better? Okay, now you just sent the dog, your mind, to chase a stick, the answer. And the answers you'll get will be far more empowering than why do they dump me? So when we say it's really difficult in the questions, let's ask well-constructed questions. So for instance, does that make sense? We can shape these well-constructed questions that give freedom to go there, but also reel it in and give you safety and security. Yeah. So you don't say, yeah, okay, I can stop there, but we can deconstruct it too if you want, but that's kind of, there's a lot of power in the question. And if we ask well-constructed questions, it can give us freedom and permission and some sense of safety in the discomfort of asking these questions.
Yeah. I think that's really important because that's actually something that I learned fairly recently, from my most recent romantic relationship. It would be so easy for me to be like, blame. Why? From their stuff. We're trying to understand why they did blah, blah, blah. But I felt that I learned more about the situation and about myself when I was able to ask those questions about what I can take from this situation to make me better today than I was the day before. And I felt more growth. I felt healthier. I felt more fulfilled. And I know we talked a lot about the conversations and dialogues and the questions that you ask other people, like the relationship that you have with the people. But it's also, in a way, the relationship that you have with yourself, right? And
Absolutely.
Being able to answer those questions not only gives you insight into your partner or whomever you're speaking with, but it also gives you it can give you insight into yourself. And that is what stood out to me the most from this, right. from this conversation, from reading up about you to prepping for everything. I feel as though even some of the previous conversations that I had seen, people, asking you and the interviews that I've seen, it wasn't often that I saw people talk about I don't want to say it's like a selfish thing, but like just about how does this affect me? How does this affect me? And like, I think people, me included, sometimes would shy away from that because like, it not only is it scary to be in that uncomfortable space with somebody else, let alone yourself, to ask yourself those questions and to dig down deep and to be authentic and genuine and honest with yourself. That shit is scary. Scarier.
Yeah. Totally. No, it's a constant peeling. I mean, it's a constant peeling of the onion. And but I think for me, it's whenever I have the fear or the discomfort or the like, I don't want to do it. For me, I've created a perspective where, okay, great. Because on the flip side of that is a great deal of growth. And I think you don't have to look further than your past. If you look at your past and you say, hey man, Okay, give me your greatest accomplishment so far. One of them.
Mine? Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
My greatest accomplishment, gosh.
One of them.
I would say my position at work, working my ass off to get to where I am at work as an executive director.
Great. So somewhere before that happened, you got the. Hey, okay, I got you. Somewhere before that happened, I mean, you kind of allude to it by you working your ass off.
Mm-hmm.
You did stuff that was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, yeah. So you would not have gone to that accomplishment if you didn't go into the discomfort.
Absolutely not. I had to take myself out of that comfort zone at work. I knew I had to stand out. I knew that I had to work a little bit harder than some other people. And I did the work, and I earned that shit, and I'm proud of that shit.
Boom. Boom. It comes to facing the challenge. It comes to stepping into the discomfort. So the path of growth is lit by your fears and discomfort. So pursue them where they appear safely, but pursue them in discomfort. Right. I think everything you say resonates for me, and I totally understand it. And I'm so grateful I have the card games at home, because when my wife and I get into it and we don't want to talk because I'm pissed and she's pissed and we're like two growling bears at each other, that's exactly when we pull out the card game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the card game comes out and it's random questions. Neither of us is asking the questions in terms of creating the question, because that gives one person more power. Right? Just random cards, and then that creates, and we don't know what the question is going to be, but we ask 1 and 2, and we start talking, and energy starts to flow, and we sit in that space, even if we don't answer it. But it's a great way to start working on the relationship and stretching the muscles, so that you can be more resilient, so that you can get to the top of the hill, the mountain, that you can run faster, that you can experience what it's like to have that type of connection. And I mean, why is makeup sex so good? Why is it afterwards that when you have a fight and you make it through constructively, you look at each other and you and your partner are that much stronger for it, because we've been through the storm.
Right.
And you don't know how you are in the storm unless you go through it. And I'm not saying, look, that we have an amusing deck, which is fun, and not everything has to be heavy duty. I'm not. And you don't have to answer any question you don't want. I'm just saying the practice of it, sitting in the questions, it's essential, in my opinion.
I love every second of this. I think that everybody that's listening, watching, I really do think that this is it's an easy read, it's a good read, it's a quality read. I'm including all of the necessary links in the description of this podcast. All you got to do is click. It's well worth the investment. And by investment, I mean time. It's worth the time. It's worth the effort. It's worth just the try, right? Because like even if you try it once and you're like, this is stupid, like whatever it may be, it's worth it, because at least still you end up learning something about yourself and the person that you do it with. You know what I'm saying? And so totally. I encourage people to click the link that I included in the description of this podcast. At minimum, just learn about it. Learn about the 12 secrets, or the 12 questions of love. Learn about the Anne. Learn about the Skin Deep. Learn about the Emmy Award winner that's on the screen right now. Where do you keep your Emmy? Where do you keep it?
Well, I just moved down here.
Did you melt it for money? Did you melt it?
No. But I remember when I first got it. It's so funny. I pretended it was like bling bling on my shoulder, and people were like, why? Because I was working so hard, my back was all messed up. I was limping. I was like, because I'm carrying this Emmy around my bling bling, and I'm like, you screwed up my back. But usually my stuff is coming in a boat from, and so it'll probably be up there somewhere. And the reason I have it there is just because it gives you it's just a reminder of the project, of what's really important. It's not the Emmy, it's the people who are willing to have these vulnerable conversations on camera. And if it's not for the participants, we're nothing. If it wasn't for the participants, I wouldn't have the lessons learned that I'm sharing in the book. So ultimately, it's about them, their contribution. Right. I'm just...
Yeah. And it's also about the bragging rights, because like the other nominees, like, hey, I got this, not you. It's okay to flex. It's fine. I give you permission. It's fine.
No, but other people like Topaz, how long are you going to be talking about that? How long are you going to be talking about the Emmy? How long can I talk about that? It's been a few years, It's like,
listen, I work in marketing, so I'm always talking about unique selling points in marketing. I'm just saying, like, it's not. It's a unique selling point. Just
it
saying.
is totally a unique selling point, and we did not talk about it for like years. I think only till 3 years after we said, no, we need Emmy Award-winning everywhere. You got and, and I think part of our weakness as a company is that we are humble. I'm humble. So we are not good at talking about ourselves. We're not good at this is the first time in 10 years that there's a face to the Skin Deep.
Right.
Because there's a book. And if you're going to sell the book and offer that value, someone has to go on the podcast and talk. And now there's a face to Topaz. But for a long time, no one had any idea. And nor is it important who the face is. What's important is having the conversations.
Right.
And
well, listen, I you are a handsome gentleman, so not a bad face, my friend. Not a bad face to put on the podcast, my friend. No, listen, my friend, I really do appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing. To everybody that's listening right now, I am going to include the links in the description of this podcast. Topaz, final words, parting words that you would like to say to the listeners right now.
Stop looking for answers. Create better questions.
That's you dropping the mic, my friend. That's you dropping the theoretical mic. Don't drop the actual mic because that looks expensive. Just like I appreciate you, my friend.
No, I appreciate
Topaz
you.
Adizes, thank you for joining me. Everybody that's listening, watching, or at home, as I said, all the information is going to be in the description of this podcast. Live a good life full of good vibes, positive energy, make people smile, and like I said before, try to be a better person today than you were the day before. And then I think you would live a good life. And word to anybody else that's listening that has an Emmy, it's okay. You can brag about it. I give you permission. It's fine. It's fine. With that said, everybody, thank you so much for watching and for listening. As always, much love, good vibes, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.